Alright, my apologies if this gets really screwed up. This is my first try at making a video. Just playing some 2-4 and 3-6 mid-stakes on Bovada. Whenever the interesting spots pop up, I will go in depth on what my thought process was. My initial plan was to make timestamps to go to the interesting spots so that I could discuss them more in depth and pause the video and keep going, but unfortunately I kind of got overwhelmed by this process. So yeah, we get to see a bunch of uninteresting stuff happening. I thought doing voice narration would be better, but in the future I might just discuss things while I might just do it live in real time. I didn't know if that would detract from the quality of poker play, because my focus would be on explaining things instead of actually, just playing so that you can see what's going on. This is a little bit more work, but yeah, let's just see how it goes. I think a good idea in the future is to create timestamps for interesting spots, and then I can just zoom past all the crap so there's not as much downtime. We got the ace-jack raised. Guy bets into us. This is a spot where our range just kind of crushes his range. So we're going to raise, and if he calls, we have a plan to bet the turn and bet the river. I think it's a mistake for him to be donking into us and then just calling it off, generally. We don't have very much information. We check raise with the sixes. I think that generally less than 50% pot size bets are pretty weak, and for the most part I just like check raising, especially like with the kind of vulnerable hand like sixes there, just check raising and grabbing my equity while it's right in front of me. Not a very good player with the aces, so we're limping. Just a pretty obvious value bet. I don't like raising from small blind with the 8-10 suited. I just think it's kind of tough to play against the button who's a fishy type player. Out of position, they're going to call the flop way too often, and you just never know when they're going to get stubborn and flop bottom pair or something and not give up or whatever. So I just kind of like limping in, keeping the pot a little smaller, and then getting a little bit more information about their hand as everything develops. I think as poker players, our goal is to compile information, and seeing how people react, how the bet sizing, things of that nature give us huge clues as to what our best play is. So I'm kind of unorthodox in a lot of ways. Hands that have value in position, a lot of times I'll just call pre because I want to be in position, and quite frankly, I think betting patterns are a huge leak among the majority of players. So based on what they do, we can kind of react and make the most profitable play. So, for instance, if we have queens on the button, we can just flat and we can just flat a 3-bet from the blinds and kind of see how they proceed and make the most money. We decided to raise with a 9-10 because of his 50% bet. We're not really repping much of anything. It's just kind of hard for him to call out of position with, you know, his random ace highs. But once he does call, we're basically just giving up because we have to assume he has some sort of hand he feels has equity out of position that can face bets farther down the road. So we're just going to give him the pot. Kind of a weak player on the button, so we flop top pair. We're just gonna go for 3 streets of value. Jack 7 deuce, not very much you can have. He doesn't seem to be too aggressive, so basic strategy, just kind of hope for the best. Limp with the ace 8. Our plan is to limp raise. Limp raise all in, but he kind of took that away from us, and I have no earthly idea how we're doing against just a 20 big blind ship there, so we fold it. I think maybe I went a little too big on the sizing with the king jack, seeing as he has, you know, probably gutter balls and stuff like that, bottom pair type hands. Sizing better probably would have been like 48. The ace 10 is pretty simple call. Alright, bottom left, we're raising 8s. Button calls, which is expected. This isn't really a great board. Any combo of most combos of you know, king jack, jack 10, queen jack, queen 10, jack, you know, jack 9. We're gonna get looked up a lot. It's not the worst idea to triple barrel, and I think that folds out most of their range. My biggest concern is the 107 stack. He's very short, and he ain't folding once we bet. So in retrospect, kind of a light peeled pre with the queen 10 versus a shorty. Just kind of, you know, can't really do anything when he bets 3 ways on the ace high board. It's just kind of a crappy spot. I could have let the queen 10 go pre, honestly. It might be a mistake calling. Folding the deuces, 2 super short. Super short stacks, no point. Well, I guess player 5 with the pocket fours felt a little different. Opening lighter with the jack 10 just because the table's kind of weak, and I generally like opening more often when I'm not going to get 3-bet and going to get a lot of calls. Strategy here is we're betting. I think with 2 bets left on the turn, he's going to raise all in with his value. So when he doesn't raise all in, we have a lot of fold equity on the river by just putting him in. The only concern is he only has 80 left, but we're, you know, that's an acceptable risk. And he calls it off with the 4-5, which, yeah, I don't really know. Don't really know how to feel about that. But whatever, nice hand. Opting to raise the 8s in the top right. In hindsight, I really would have liked to have raised with the pocket trays when he bets 50% there. But maybe I had been a little scared by the 4-5 off hand that just happened. So possible that influenced my decision. Peeling with the king-queen in position. Pretty good flop for us with the king-queen. We're essentially just going to give up with the pocket 8s. Another 50% bet. We're raising it. There's 47 in the pot. We're risking 46 to win 47. And with their bet size in here, they just don't have strong enough hands to combat us. We're going to pick up that pot probably 80% of the time, and we only need to pick it up more than 50% to turn a profit. So pretty much going to be doing that all day long, every day. And I know you might be thinking like that I'm taking a long time at some of my tables to act, but you know, I had other things going on, making tea for myself, you know, occasionally going to the bathroom, just pretty standard poker player type behavior while I'm clicking away on my laptop. So I really like our seat at the bottom left versus the weak player. That should be a pretty profitable seat for us. It appears as if the 5 seat on the bottom right is very weak as well, so we'll hopefully be isolating him and trying to get those stacks. This is just my opinion, but I think in general, like I see bet on the ace-10 on the jack-jack board, like a lot of my poker strategy comes with exploiting where people are unbalanced, and I think that lots of people are unbalanced in their continuation bet percentage. I think they just continuation bet a little bit way too often, and if you look at my tables, at the top right, I'm continuation betting about 75%, and I would say that mine, like I'm just like everybody else. I continuation bet probably way too much, and so knowing that, I'm just gonna exploit the people who are just like me. Because I think generally it's probably a profitable strategy against a lot of players to continuation bet, so everybody's going to keep doing it, including myself. But in order for us to combat, we're going to do a lot of raising. This ace queen hand, I 3-bet it, flop middle pair. Not much value that we can get. The ace deuce versus this guy raising, we're just going to try to get it in and hope he has some sort of flush draw. Bet 3-bet, get it in here versus a flush draw. Alas, he folds, so he just had nothing. I guess maybe potentially with 4, but in general he probably has nothing there. With a 4 he just calls, so. Isolating the limper with the king jack, and oddly enough I found that people that limp pre, or they don't limp but they post pre, they call raises like a super high percent of the time. Our king jack gets 3-bet, which probably is going to happen fairly often when we isolate a limper and the button calls, but this 3-bet seemed pretty small, so I actually gave it some credence. Like I felt that it was pretty strong. And then the big blind cold 4-bets it, essentially committing himself to play against 6, and 6 folds fairly quickly. So obviously I was wrong with my analysis. And that's the thing, like no matter how good you are, what you think of yourself, like you're going to analyze things incorrectly just because there's not enough information every hand to make the correct decisions. I see that there's the Jack-10 hand is an instance where I feel like I'm probably c-betting a little too much. I don't think I'm getting a lot of folds on ace-7 tray with people's propensity to float. So a better strategy there, instead of betting once and then check folding, I feel if I'm going to go for it, like then we just got to go. We got to bet the flop, bet the turn, and chip the river. Or maybe not chip the river because they tell us basically on the turn whether they're floating or not and whether they're just going to be calling. We decide to try to disguise our hand a little by making a weak c-bet with the ace-6, and they're just, playing fit or fold. They don't have anything, so they give up. King should be a pretty good opportunity on the bottom right, considering the table that we're at. But alas, everyone's folding and we got a min raise on the button. And I remember we decided to size it 1 click bigger. I don't know why. In this situation, we obviously want action, and I wish I would have just kept it at $32 to try to get a call from player 3. Because in position with kings versus a guy playing, tons of hands is just like printing money. Queens on the button, another good opportunity. Let's see if we can do anything with it. We opted to raise 3x on the button this time because of our opponents who are in the blinds. I feel that's something, you know, people probably don't do as much as they should, but players that are playing a ton of hands with our value on the button, we may as well raise 3 times instead of 2 times to create a bigger pot in position. They don't really care about peeling for $8 or $12. It's the same. This is an interesting spot with the 5-6 of hearts in the top left. If he would have bet less, around $20, then we just call, because I think that represents a much weaker range, and our 6 is very likely to be ahead, and we can get him to go nuts on the turn and river with a very low equity hand. But since he bet 66% of the pot, we decided to raise, thinking that he was at the stronger part of his range, and he ended up just folding. So, and we, with the 5-6, we're raising to 5-6 of hearts. We're raising to get it in. We don't, no messing around there. There's so many hands we have great equity against that. We get it in, and we're happy about it. For a while, I experimented with taking off how much I was losing at each individual table, because I didn't want to see the results lest they affect my mood, or just it's pretty unimportant information how you're doing in one session, because we're all playing poker for the long game anyway. But the benefit to keeping how much I'm winning or losing is that I also get to see how much everybody else is winning and losing. So if I'm not paying attention and somebody's stuck 3 or 4 buy-ins, then that's going to affect how I play against them, because players that are generally stuck 3 or 4 buy-ins are not thinking quite as rationally or clearly and as players that are winning or breaking even. And obviously we can't tell, being anonymous tables, playing against these players. They could be stuck other places, but we just got to use the information that we personally have available. So, isolating with the king queen, pretty normal. I actually expected player 6 to 3-bet fairly often, and we're 4-betting him. I mean, we're 4-betting the hell out of him because he's going to be raising us so often. And then the small blind decided to squeeze, and the small blind has played like 1 hand out of his first 12, and I was kind of upset with myself for folding this one. But as you can see, I did fold. This hand in the top left, the ace queen, the big blind cold calling the 3-bet really threw us for a loop, and we decided not to mess with it, considering the big blind's very strong range. Three-betting this guy, getting ace queen in pre in the top right. Really strange line that player 6 took here, calling the flop, leading into me on the turn. He's not repping very much at all. Half pot bet on the river, and there you go. Another thing that you'll see me do a lot, I limp small blind versus big blind, and I throw in raises very often. People really don't know how to react to it very well, and it's not something that I think players have put a ton of thought into, or your average player. So I feel like we get a lot of bad decisions when players make a lot of bad decisions when facing that from us, which is obviously good. And if we can create an edge from the small blind playing against the big blind, then that's kind of huge. It's going to be huge for our overall profits long term. Again, with the King Jack versus the limper, that was the guy that had the 4-5. We're just going to bet for value, and if he ships at any point, we are never folding the King Jack. Our friend with the Ace Jack left on the bottom right hand table. I was actually going to fold in the top right, but then the less than 50% pot bet compelled me to ship. I think that we have excuse me, a much stronger range than them, and there could be value betting any number of small clubs, betting 19 into 40. There's 59 in the pot, and we're risking 70. And I just think that it's going to work again, you know, probably 75–80% of the time. And if we don't take that opportunity to exploit their bet sizing, then we're leaving money on the table, and it's just going to affect our win rate drastically over any significant amount of time. I opted to flat the Queen 10 of Hearts because I didn't want to 3-bet and isolate versus the regular type player. Pretty high equity flop for us. We decided to lead into them, hoping actually that the 5 seat peels along, and you know, we had really good equity and just a really good spot if the 5 seat peels, but alas, he just folded. Checking back the ace 5, the 5 seat has 3-bet a ton, so he's not really repping very much with his bets or whatever, so I don't really think he has very much here often, if ever. And as we can see, he had the tray high. And also he did the 50%, less than 50% pot bet, and had a 0 equity type hand, which is a recurring thing. This hand, the pocket sevens, was pretty interesting to me. The 1 seat is 3-betting a ton, so I think he's capable of squeezing here fairly wide. We can get it in. We can get it in. If we get it in, my thinking at the time was that I'm not sure how good our equity is just getting it in against the 1 seat. And if we call, then the 5 seat's almost always calling behind. We can take it 3 ways, and then I can kind of see what the 1 seat does post-flop. This is not a great flop for us. The 1 seat makes a weak bet, and you know, in my opinion, I think that the 1 seat's range should be a little better than normal, a normal squeezing range, simply because the 5 seat is probably going to call a 3-bet, and he's probably not going to fold to the continuation bet. So you're really investing a lot with a very, you know, if your squeeze range is weak, you're investing a ton of money out of position with a weak range versus, an opponent that's not inclined to fold. So it's just, frankly, I think it's a piss poor play. And as you can see, he decided not to invest the second bet and just gave up when the 5-seat did exactly what the 5-seat does, and that's call the 3-bet and call the continuation bet. Again, with the posters, they post and then they call a raise. It's like clockwork. They do it every single time. I don't really understand it, but Again, the ace-5, that's a hand that under different circumstances we would 3-bet, but we don't want to isolate against the 5-seat just because. Bottom pair at the back of a flush draw on the bottom right, that's a monster as far as we're concerned. 2-pair. As you can see, even with us, our sizing is 16 into 23 instead of 12. We opt for the 1 click up instead of the smaller bet, and it denotes 2-pair. So if you're really paying attention to the bet sizing, you can get a gold mine of information. We end up calling with a lot of hands on the button that different people 3-bet. Some people will just outright fold, which I can't imagine doing ever. But like I said before, when we're in position, we get the information before our opponents. They risk money, we don't, and we get to see, he bet 75% pot there, which from our experience just implies that he has a stronger range. If he bets, $24, which is a little bit more than half the pot, we're probably raising with our ace tray and expecting a fold, a very high percent of the time. Most of the actions that we make are entirely based on what our opponents are doing. In poker, if you are reactive to what they're doing and you kind of understand the weak links in their chain where their ranges are weaker, then you can really exploit it and make a ton of money. Top left, the Queen Jack, not really thrilled about this guy, playing 14% of his hands, calling on the button. He's probably got a stronger range than us, and he's in position. And so what do? We continuation bet, because that's what we do too often. And he calls, which is frankly expected with a lot of his range, and we decide to not keep going. And he makes a very tiny bet, and we fold. And that's just us getting beat down pretty much by a superior range in position and us overextending ourselves. We could go nuts with the Queen 9 after isolating this guy, but with the 4-5, we're deathly afraid of getting called light. So I considered shipping here. Doesn't look like I considered it because I clicked it so fast, but I did consider it for a second, but ultimately opted not to, just because getting him to fold is, you know, it's a tough challenge. We tried. It didn't work out too well. And as it turns out, he made a full house, so probably not going to get him to fold that for, you know, if we raise our soul on the river, he's probably just calling it off. Another pocket sevens hand. Considering 3-betting, we opt not to. We call the raise with the Queen 9 of diamonds in the top left, which is questionable. Raising that guy, the continuation bets way too much because he bet around 55% of the pot, and from our experience, he doesn't have a strong range, and we're not repping shit, but it doesn't really matter because people don't really have a very well-defined bet 3-bet range on the flop that isn't the nuts, so we get to exploit that. Really hated the Queen 9 hand. I hated everything about that. I didn't want to peel out of position with just the Queen High flush draw. Despite the fact that we probably have pretty good equity, it's just, you know, too obvious when the flush hits to get paid, and also there are times that when we hit the flush, he has the nut flush, and then we get stacked, and so it's just not very profitable to peel with the Queen 9 of diamonds at the top left. I apologize for not pointing out what table I'm talking about. Like I said, this is my first video I've ever made, so I'm a newbie. I hope to get better with practice over time. Very small check raise coming from at the top right hand. This hand was pretty interesting. Ace Jack generally 3-bets aces and jacks, so he's essentially repping ace 6 or pocket sixes, and I'm just not buying it. I actually c-bet on this board hoping to induce a raise or something crazy, and a lot of times they just fold and nothing happens, but occasionally you get somebody that you know, thinks that you're not going to be calling with top pair enough, and the problem is they're not repping something that beats top pair often enough. So pick up $130 versus 8 high. And were we calling the river? Probably calling the river, because he overbet the turn when he bet 177 on the turn, which to me doesn't indicate a ton of strength, because our range is mostly one pair type hands, and it doesn't feel like he wants action. So when our opponents don't want action, guess what we give them? We give them action. I like the Queen 7 deuce at the bottom right table. This is a board we are going to check raise fairly often. The silly guy is the one that led into the pre-flop raiser. We decided check raise. And here's the problem. We did not expect to get called, and we don't have a plan moving forward. So kind of dumb of me to not keep betting. I didn't think about it at the time. I was thinking his range contains a lot of king-queen type hands, but This guy's playing 50% of his hands. He's likely to have, you know, Queen X, bad queen, 6-7 of spades apparently, and we just gave the pot away. I really do not like how I played that hand. We got the jacks at the bottom left against this guy, the 4-5 guy that called 3 bets when he rivered bottom pair. So definitely think we're getting called light. A mistake would be to go for his whole stack. I think that making a smaller 1/3 type bet is going to get called a lot more often by, you know, you could have a gutter ball, Jack 10, we block, so 9-10 is more likely. But he's tanking all the way down, so my assumption is he has some sort of 8 that he just can't fold for the life of him. This guy at the top left was giving me trouble. He's not really folding to our continuation bets, so we decided to go nuts and do a bet line versus what appears to be a 1-pair type range. And we get it jammed in our face, which I think is okay for us on the river because we have a lot of hands where we turn the nut flush draw and actually make the nut flush on the river. So our range is protected when he does ship like that, so not being exploited. The ace-8 hand that's coming up, I still don't know how I feel about the way I play it. We flop top pair, top kicker. This guy is not folding to us ever. Seems to be a pretty competent player though, so putting a lot of pressure on us. The turn puts up so many draws, and I think he's gonna think that we're gonna bet here with our value hands way more often than not, and the hands that we check are gonna be very weak. So if we check, we're probably getting a bet from a floaty type hand, and if we bet, then we're probably getting action from hands that have good equity against us. So I don't like the turn bet. I think check is the best way to go about it. After the check, I don't know. You could manage to do a check raise, just depending on the dynamic. Check raise and get it in. I don't think it's the worst play. Because another good thing when you check raise on the turn. Well, actually, I don't know about check raise getting it in. It's tricky because when you check raise on the turn, the hands that do have equity, his straight draws, flush draws type hands, they're going to call. They're not going to ship against our range, our very strong range, perceived range there. So yeah, it's tricky all the way around. If anybody has any thoughts about it, I would like to hear them. Don't really know what to do against the 4x on the button, but it's a very wet board. Generally, when players check this type of board, they don't have very much of anything. So we're going to pick up this pot a huge percent of the time. And my video has about 2 minutes left. I appreciate you listening. Hope I wasn't too boring. Hope I didn't say too much. But hopefully in the future I'll be able to entertain you more and set it up better to where I can just go to the spots that I want to go to and then analyze them or whatever. Oh, the 6 is here. This guy's 3-betting a lot from the button. He's short stack. We are getting it in. And as it turns out, we have really good equity until There we go. Bink our little 6 on the river. Alright, I think that's the last interesting hand that happens before I cut the video off. Everything else that was super interesting happened like 5 minutes after the video, so you guys got lucky. And I got lucky too because I have to randomly talk when nothing is happening. So, alright, I'm going to turn off the audio now. There's 20 seconds left, so alright, I hope you enjoyed my video. My name is Brad Wilson. Thank you for listening, and email me, let me know. Email me at bradswilson@yahoo.com and let me know what I can improve. Let me know what you love. Let me know what you hated. Thank you very much. Bye.